As you can see in this video, we are going to be taking a look at points, lines, and planes in the world of geometry and talking about how do we identify them and also how do we model them, and by modeling, how do we draw them out, how do we write them, and so on. There's also some other points that are on here that we're going to, or some other terms we're going to be looking at here. Talking about coplanar points, collinear points, and also what happens when lines and planes do intersect. So let's go ahead and get started. And what we're going to be doing first of all here is to define some of this information and then talk about the different parts to it. So first thing we need to define is what is a point. A point is a location. It's something that we can give a name to. So when you look at a map and you have a city on the map, you can put a name to it. When we name points, we name them with capital letters. So I can refer to this as point A. The point that I just drew right there, it has no shape to it, it has no size to it, it is just simply a point. So I have point A, I have point B, and I have point C. I have those 3 points. We use capital letters to them. Sometimes when it's written out, you will see the word point. So you might see point A, but a lot of times what they will just do for reference of a point is they will just use the capital letter A, and that is inferring that is talking about point A. All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about is what is a line. A line is actually made up of points, and at minimum there needs to be at least 2 points to make up a line. And it has no thickness or width to it, and there's exactly 1 line that goes through the 2 points. Now you can have infinitely many points on a line, but you need at least 2 points to make a line. And like it says right here, it has no length or width to it, so therefore it goes indefinitely in both directions. As far as naming the line that we will have here, I'm going to base it off the 2 points that I see. So say I have point A and point B both on this line. How I would name this line is I will use those points as reference, and then over the top of it I will draw a line with 2 arrows on it, and that is referring to line AB. Now sometimes you will have lines as well that might have more than 2 points on them. So I'm going to go ahead right here and we're going to use CAT. So I have the 3 points of CAT on this line here. Now when you are naming the line, you only want to pick 2 of the 3 points. You do not pick all 3 of them. So I could name this line, say, line CA. You could name it line AT, or you could name it CT. Also, you could do TC, TA, AC, but what we do not want to do is this is not line CAT. Why is it not going to be there? Well, that can be mistaken for something later on. Typically, you might not, when we talk about start measuring, and we don't measure lines, but we measure segments. And when we are measuring segments, those have an actual length to them. Well, when you see 3 letters, that could be mistaken for not necessarily a segment, but it could be mistaken for an angle or even a plane, and some of those things just cannot be measured. So only use 2 letters. In fact, I'm going to write that down here. Only use 2 letters. Okay, so that's just a common little thing to be thinking about. And there's also another way you could name a line. Sometimes it doesn't have points on it, and instead it has something over here, like we're going to have an M. And you'll see kind of like a lowercase cursive script letter that's being used. And what this is referring to then is that this is, in fact, line M. So that's just another way that you could see these lines. All right, on to the next one, talking about what a line segment is. A line segment is a segment that has a beginning and an end. It's a line with 2 endpoints. Now, segments can be measured in length, which is good for us to be looking at later on. And so you have to have a start and an end to that segment. So once again, I'm just going to use points A and B for reference. And if I'm referring to segment AB, rather than taking and putting a line with two arrows over the top, I'm going to draw just a line. Notice there are no arrows to it. And like when you have a line with 3 points on it, so let's go ahead and use D, O, and G, I have 3 different options for naming this segment. I could do segment DO, I could do segment OG, I could do segment DG. What we do not want to be doing here is naming it segment DOG. We only want to use 2 points. So I guess I'll write that little reminder right here. Only use 2 points, 2 letters. All right. And those are your names for our segments. And then we're going to talk about what a plane is. No, not an airplane. A plane is described as a flat surface that's made up of points. And something really important to write down here, it's at least 3 that are not on the same line. It's referring to at least 3 points that are not on the same line. And it doesn't extend indefinitely in all directions. So when you think about it, the room that you're probably sitting in right now has a floor, it's got a ceiling, and it's got 4 walls. Each wall is a plane, the floor is a plane, the ceiling is a plane. Taking you to a football reference, and when you get a touchdown, the football has to, what they refer to as, break the plane of the end zone. And so as long as that football, any part of it, breaks the plane, it's considered a touchdown. And that plane, even though it's like imaginary line, it extends indefinitely in all directions, okay? Or in both directions, I should say. As far as drawing a plane, it's kind of unique in itself, because how do you draw something that goes indefinitely in all directions? So we kind of draw it out like a parallelogram here, kind of like a slanted, and it looks maybe like a piece of paper. And as far as naming a plane, we have to have 3 points that are not on the same line. And so in a plane, I mean, you might have different things going on. You might have some different points sitting there. I might have a line right here, and I'm going to just put some points here. So let's go X, we're going to go Y, we're going to go Z here. We're going to have point A and B on here. And so now, if I am going to name this plane, first of all, I'm going to use the word plane. That is important. And now I'm going to pick 3 points that are not on the same line. So I could name this plane X, Y, Z, because none of those points are on the same line. I could name it plane YAZ, so YAZ, since they are not on the same line. I could also name it ABX if I wanted to. Now A and B are on the same line, but X is not. Another way that you can name it is based off of, in the corner you will sometimes see a uppercase script letter, or a cursive letter, and that will represent the plane as well. So here's my fancy way of drawing an F, and so we could refer to this as well as plane F. The big thing about this here is make sure you include the word plane. So include the word plane whenever you are trying to describe or talk about here a plane. Then a couple other words that we're going to add to our vocabulary here. Hopefully you've heard the word linear before, since you're coming from Algebra 1, which is you do a lot of linear algebra. And linear means that we are talking about a straight line. And when you talk about linear algebra, you're talking about a lot like y equals mx plus b. That is a linear equation, and so it graphs a straight line. Collinear are points that lie on the same line. So if I take points and put them on the line here, that means that they are collinear. Coplanar just refers to having points that are on the same plane. So if I have a plane here and however many points I put on here, all of those are on the same plane. So we're going to take a look at this examples here and trying to answer a few questions here, and I'm actually going to have you answer some of them coming up here, and you'll notice in the Edpuzzle. So you may have to stop and look for one. All right, so first of all, trying to come up with 4 collinear points. I need to pick 4 points that are on the same line. And the only 4 collinear points that I have, the only 4 points that are all on the same line are right here. That would be points H, N, K, and L. So H, N, K, and L, those are the only options of where we have 4 collinear points. Name a line that contains point M. So here's where point M is. I have a couple different options that I could do for here. I could do line MN. I could do line MO. I could even do line NO if I wanted to. Or we could do line P as an option. Okay, how about a line that contains points H and K? So where I see H and K, here's H and here's K. So that's referring to this line here. Different options that we could do is we could do HN, we could do HK, we could do line H, looks like that's an I, HI. There are a bunch of different options that we could do here. We could do NK, we could do NI, and I'm not even sure if I necessarily got all of the options. Last and final one that we could do is what? The last and final one that we could do right here is line R. Line R is also down there. Another name for line Q. So when we look at line Q, here are some points. So what are 2 points that we could use for line Q? We could do J and K, so line JK. We could do KL, or we could do LJ. Those are all options for us to do. Last question here is, where is the intersection of lines P and R? So if I look at line P and I look at line R, where are those 2 lines intersecting at each other? They are intersecting at point N. So just a capital N is all I need to write for that. All right, let's take a look at this next image. It's more working with some planes. Hopefully you can kind of look at the 3-dimensional figure here and notice that you have a flat surface with a rectangular pyramid sitting on top of that. So one thing I want you to be aware of is that this plane right here, plane R, and this bottom here, they are sitting right on top of each other. So Y, V, W, and X, all 4 of those points are on that bottom plane. All right, so the first part here is to name 3 coplanar points. 3 points that are on the same plane. We could do V, Y, and X. We could do Y, X, and W. Quite honestly, we can use any of those 4 letters there. Name a plane that contains the point X. Well, there are 3 planes that contain the point X. One of them is we can refer to the plane on the bottom here, which is plane R. So we could say plane R. Now I could also name this differently, and I could say that refer to it as plane YXW if I wanted to. That would be another way to work with that same plane. Now there's another plane that also includes point X, and it's this triangle right here. And so another plane that we could refer to is plane XZW. XZ and W. And we'll see if I can draw this one in here. Then there's also one more plane that contains point X, and that is ZYX. So I will write this out. Sorry, I'm kind of running out of room. So plane YZX. Y, Z, and X. Right, the intersection of plane R and plane, the other one here, ZVY. So plane R is the bottom right here, and then it has plane ZVY. So when I look at ZVY, that's this triangle over here. Now, where are these two planes intersecting each other? They are actually intersecting each other right here at that segment. Now, it's not a line because VY is a segment right there, so I'm going to go ahead here and VY, that segment of VY is where these are intersecting each other. How many planes appear in the figure? Well, there is one plane on the bottom, so there's one. Here's two. There's a third triangle. And I'm going to have to erase those last two. So there's three. Then we have this back triangle, which is four, and then another triangle here on the side. So we have four triangles, one rectangle, and so there would be a total of 5 planes that appear in the figure. How many planes appear to contain point W? So where I look for point W, which is right here, I see that the plane on the bottom is one of them. I also see that the two triangles right here, there's this triangle contains point W, as well as this triangle here. So there are 3 planes that contain point W. Alright, so that is that. Hopefully you were able to get some good notes. Bring those notes with you to class, and I will see you then.